His family while they spent 2 days in the West African nation. I spoke with the president at Cape Coast Castle, where he'd just taken a tour with his family. He just visited the dungeons where countless enslaved Africans were held for shipment, literally shipment as human cargo, to be sent to a life in bondage in South America, the United States, and the Caribbean. The castle is a haunting place, a place visited by many African Americans now looking to retrace their roots.
Do you think what happened here still has resonance in America? That the slave experience still is something that should be talked about and should be remembered and should be present in everyday life?
Well, you know, I think that the experience of slavery is like the experience of the Holocaust. I think it's one of those things you don't forget about. I think it's important that the way we think about it and the way it's taught is not one in which there's simply a victim and a victimizer, and that's the end of the story. I think the way it has to be thought about, the reason it's relevant is because whether it's what's happening in Darfur or what's happening in the Congo or what's happening in too many places around the world, you know, the capacity for cruelty still exists. The capacity for discrimination still exists. The capacity to think about people who are different, not just on the basis of race, but on the basis of religion or the basis of sexual orientation or gender still exists. And so, you know, trying to use these kinds of extraordinary moments to widen the lens and make sure that we're all reflecting on how we're treating each other, I think is something that I want my kids to think about, and I want every child to think about.
How'd you explain it to Sasha Malia?
Well, you know, you try to explain that people were willing to degrade others because they appeared differently, and you know, you tried to actually get them to engage in the imaginative act of what it would be like if they were snatched away from mom and dad and sent to someplace they had never seen before. But, you know, part of what you also try to do with kids is to get them to imagine themselves on the other side as being the slave merchant. And you know, that slave merchant might have loved their children and gone to that, you know, place of worship up right above the dungeon, and get them to make sure that they're constantly asking themselves questions about whether they're treating people fairly and whether they are examining their own behavior and how it affects others.
They say this is the door of return for African Americans who are revisiting Ghana. And I talked to one African American lady yesterday who said that coming here is such a powerful experience that she actually decided to move here. I know you've met with many African Americans who decided to move here. Do you understand? They say that there's a sense of coming home. Do you understand that feeling?
Well, you know, I will tell you, the first time that I traveled to Africa, I think that there is a special sense for African Americans of somehow connecting up with a part of yourself that you might not have even been aware was there. Now, obviously, for me, it was different because I was directly meeting relatives and learning about a father I didn't know. But I do think there's a sense for a lot of African Americans that it's a profound, life-changing experience. The interesting thing, though, is, you know, I've met a lot of white Americans who come to Africa and say it was a life-changing experience for them too.
This is the home where everyone comes from.
Yeah, exactly. And there is a powerful sense of tapping into something very elemental about
Sure, once you
Africa.
come, you sort of always come back.
Yeah, you do.
President Obama at Cape Coast Castle in Ghana. Later in the program, we're going to take you to a place where slavery still exists. We'll also have more of the conversation with President Obama tomorrow on 360, including serious questions about alleged war crimes in Afghanistan and whether he supports an investigation. There were light moments as well with the president, specifically light gray. Take a look.
And then you're getting gray. Are you worried about it?
As long as I've got you as a role model, I'm okay. Huh?
Yeah, it's not so bad. That and much more, including how Michelle Obama, a descendant of slaves and slave owners, reacted to the Cape Coast visit. And the president describes what happened when Sasha and Malia met Pope Benedict. That's tomorrow night on our conversation on 360. Light moments and my battle with bugs, not the electronic kind, the creepy, crawly kind. If you go to ac360.com right now, you can read my tweets from the trip, including the bizarre bug bite that made my eyes swell shut right before meeting the president. Kind of odd. Still ahead, a historic here on Capitol Hill. Judge Sonia Sotomayor in the hot seat and firing back against Republican critics. And breaking news, police make a new arrest in the murder of a Florida couple known for adopting special needs kids. We'll be right back.